So can you lose or gain weight just by breathing? Kind of a silly question, isn't it? But surprisingly, this question has quite an interesting answer. Now, before I go deeper into that stuff, I want to put out two warnings here. First of all, the things that I'm going to present now are kind of derived from my 75-hour dry fast that I did recently and finished recently. Everything went well. But before you try anything that I try here, 75 hours dry is no joke. Before you do anything like that, please go consult your local professional drug dealer, because I don't want you to mess with your health, okay? So secondly, the second warning, I'm going to present here for half an hour roughly some calculations and ideas that I came up with during this fast. And if you're not a complete geek when it comes to human physiology and metabolism and stuff like that, this video is probably not something for you. If you, on the other hand, are very interested in some numbers, in some chemical formulas, and how carbohydrates and fats are really metabolized in the human body and stuff like that, and how this all relates to fasting and weight loss, well, then this video could be interesting for you. Then please stay on and enjoy. I try to keep it as concise and as interesting as possible, but despite that, it's basically just a sheet of paper with some numbers on. So I hope you enjoy anyways. Alright guys, sit back, relax, grab a drink, because we're gonna dive into a little bit of human physiology and metabolism here real quickly. Now let's take a look at my notes. As you can see, we're gonna start a little bit boring with a few numbers, but it should get pretty interesting pretty soon as we progress. So let's see here. Can you gain weight just by breathing? What do we have to take a look at in order to solve this question? Well, first of all, we gotta check out our net equations for carbohydrate metabolism and net equations for fat metabolism in the human body. Now, I took the equation for glucose in terms of carbohydrates, because glucose is representative of carbohydrates in the body, because if you're burning carbohydrates, there's pretty much an 80 to 90% chance that it's actually glucose. If we're breaking down liver glycogen, it is glucose. If we're breaking down muscle glycogen, it is glucose. Now, there are also other sugars in the body, like for example fructose, depending of course on how much fruit you eat and stuff. These get metabolized differently than this equation, okay? But in the main percentage of all carbohydrates is glucose. So that's basically representative here. Let's take a look at it here. 1 molecule of glucose, C6H12O6, plus 6 molecules of oxygen, O2, get converted to 6 CO2, 6 carbon dioxide, and 6 water molecules, that's H2O. So and of course energy, of course. Okay, so the reason why we're actually doing this is of course to generate energy for the human body, to convert ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and the phosphate to ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the energy currency of the human body, basically. So what do we have to do in order to find out if we are actually gaining weight during this process? Because this is respiration, right? This is breathing. This is just breathing. We're not eating anything. We're not taking a piss. We're not taking a bowel movement and stuff like that. So, of course, we have to take a look at what we're breathing in and how heavy that is, and what we're breathing out and how heavy that is. How can we do that? We gotta look up the molar mass of oxygen, because that's what we're breathing in, right? Oxygen. The molar mass of oxygen is 32 grams per mole. So this number is actually, that you can look up from the internet pretty simply. It's based on how heavy the oxygen molecule actually is, and this is of course dependent on which atoms the oxygen molecules contain. Now, as you can see, we've got 2 oxygen atoms here in one molecule of molecular oxygen, and that equates to 32 grams per mole of oxygen. Now, as you can see, we don't have only 1 molecule of oxygen here, but 6. So we gotta multiply that by 6, and we get to 192 grams of oxygen breathed in per mole of glucose burned, okay? Because we're burning 1 mole of glucose with 6 moles of oxygen here. Now let's take a look at the other side here, carbon dioxide, which we're breathing out. That's the arrow away from the equation, okay? 44 grams per mole molar mass. Now as you can see, carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen. Why? Well, because of this carbon atom here, of course. As you can see, the oxygen molecule and the carbon dioxide molecule are pretty similar, actually. Both contain 2 oxygen atoms, but the carbon dioxide, of course, contains as well 1 carbon. That's why carbon dioxide, okay? So we've got a molar mass of 44 here times 6, because we've got 6 molecules. That's 264 grams of carbon dioxide breathed out per mole of glucose burned. Now that's a higher number than this one. So as you can see on the first side, we're losing weight just by breathing when we are in pure carbohydrate metabolism, okay? So that's without pissing, that's without bowel movements, that's without perspiration, okay? Without sweating and losing moisture through breathing and stuff. If we all take these not into account, we would still lose weight just by breathing out this carbon dioxide, and essentially it's just the carbon that we're breathing out, okay? How much? Well, of course, minus 264 plus 192 is minus 72 grams. So the net weight loss of 72 grams per mole of glucose burned basically derived from these 2 numbers. Now we can control kind of quickly and very easily here if we calculated this correctly by taking a look at the compounds which actually reside in the body, which is glucose in the beginning and metabolic water in the end, because here water gets created and this is metabolic water, as I've talked before. So basically a mole of glucose, that's 180 grams per mole, okay? 6 moles of H2O, that's 108 grams. So if we subtract that again, minus 180 plus 108 is minus 72 grams. So we get the same number as here. That means we calculated correctly. We're losing 72 grams per mole of glucose burned in pure carbohydrate metabolism just by breathing, okay? Nice. So now we gotta just make the same thing for fat metabolism. Now the equation for fat metabolism is completely different, as you can see, than that from glucose, but it contains the same end products, so it's quite comparable still. Now for fat, I took the fatty acid palmitic acid. Palmitic acid is just like glucose for carbohydrates, the representative fatty acid for fats, okay? So I think 70% of all fatty acids roughly in the animal body are actually palmitic acid, which means that if you are burning fat in your body, there is quite a high chance that you're actually burning palmitic acid. That's why I took the equation for palmitic acid here, because it is representative for fat metabolism in the human body. Let's take a look at it. We've got palmitic acid, CH3, CH4, 14 times this stuff, COOH. So as you can see, palmitic acid, a much more complex molecule and a much bigger molecule as well than glucose, is also a lot heavier. It's 256 grams per mole compared to 180 grams per mole on glucose. Gets burned with 23 molecules of oxygen here. So that's a lot more oxygen than in glucose, because we've got a lot more C atoms here in this palmitic acid, by the way. That's why. So these get converted to 16 CO2, which is also a lot more carbon dioxide than in glucose, but not so much more than oxygen. So we're gonna see how that turns out. Plus 16 water, a lot of metabolic water gets created here, and of course, yet again, energy, which we use for bodily functions. So let's calculate again. 32 grams per mole of oxygen times 23 is 736 grams of oxygen breathed in per mole of palmitic acid burned. Here again, 44 grams per mole of CO2 times 16, that's 704 grams of CO2 breathed out per mole of palmitic acid burned. Look at that. This number is higher than this number. So we're actually breathing in more weight than we're breathing out. So that means we're actually gaining weight here just by breathing, okay? The net weight gain is 32 grams per mole of palmitic acid burned. Now let's do the control calculation by taking a look at what stays in the body. That's 256 minus 256 plus 288, that's plus 32 grams again. So we're calculating correctly here. Now that's fascinating, isn't it? If we're in pure fat metabolism and we're not taking a piss, we're not eating anything, we're not drinking anything, we're not taking a bowel movement, no perspiration, we're actually gaining weight just by breathing in the form of metabolic water, of course, okay? Because these 16 H2O are actually super heavy. And that's what stays in the body. That's quite interesting, isn't it? So you can actually gain weight just by breathing when we take all these assumptions into account. Now, this opens up a huge number of questions, basically, and some really interesting thoughts that I would like to share here with you in the context also of fasting and stuff, okay? Because remember, we're not eating or drinking here, we're not taking a piss, so this is basically a dry fasted state here. We're calculating a dry fasted state. Now, let's continue here. The first interesting question that you could ask yourself now is, trying to frame this here correctly, I'm gonna make it. So how much weight is actually lost, respectively gained, by breathing, just by respiration, during 1 hour of dry fasting? Because now we know how much weight we lose if we burn 1 mole of these compounds, okay? But we're of course not losing always 1 mole of these compounds. We don't know that yet. So let's take a look at how much weight we're actually losing during dry fasting, because we can calculate this one as well, assuming that we know our basal metabolic rate, BMR, which I assumed here to be 2,000 calories per day. Now this number you have to take with a grain of salt. This is from the internet as well, and I'm pretty sure when you're dry fasting this number changes. It also changes in respect to what gender you are, how tall you are, how old you are, and stuff like that, okay? But let's go with the super standard assumption, 2,000 calories a day. That's 2,000 divided by 24, 83.3 calories per hour, okay? So we're burning 83.3 calories per hour when dry fasting. So now we need to know how much weight that equates to, okay, in carbohydrate and fat metabolism. Let's take a look at the carbs first. What we as well need to know is the heat of combustion of glucose. Of course, we need to know how much energy is released when we burn a certain amount of glucose. Now, this is 670 calories per mole of glucose. This is something that I looked up in the internet as well. And with this, we can actually calculate, because now we simply take the 83.3 calories per hour from here, divided by the 670 calories per mole. We can cross out the calories, and we get 0.124 moles of glucose per hour burned, okay? Assuming that our basal metabolic rate is 2,000 calories per day. Now, we already know from this sheet of paper here how many grams we lose when we burn 1 mole of glucose, okay? But we only burn 0.124 moles of glucose per hour. So let's multiplicate that with the weight loss from this sheet of paper, which was 72 grams per mole. Then we can cross out the moles again, and then we end up at roughly 9 grams per hour. So we have here a net weight loss of 9 grams per hour if we are just by breathing, if we are in pure carbohydrate metabolism, okay? So that means times 24, that's 260 grams per day of weight lost. Now that's actually not too little if you think about it. 216 grams just by breathing, okay? Just breathing out carbon, basically, carbon atoms. Now let's take a look at fats. The heat of combustion of palmitic acid is 2,394 calories per mole. This is again from the internet. A lot more than the carbs. Now, this this only makes sense because we know that fats are much more energy dense than carbohydrates. Okay, fats contain much more energy than carbs, so the heat of combustion is also a lot higher. It's almost 4 times as high, okay, than carbohydrates, than glucose. Now let's take a look here when we do the same calculations. 83.3 divided by 2003 is 0.035 moles of palmitic acid burned per hour. Okay, so we need a lot less moles of palmitic acid to sustain 2000 calories a day than we need glucose, because it's so much more energy dense. Now, taking into account what we've calculated before, that we actually gain 32 grams of weight per mole of palmitic acid burned, we can simply multiply this with 0.035, crossing out the moles, and we're getting roughly 1.1 grams of weight gained per hour, or times 24, 27 grams per day of weight gained. Now, isn't that interesting? So we're gaining 27 grams per day just by breathing if we are in pure fat metabolism. Yeah, we're not taking any piss, we're not making any bowel movement, and so weiter, and so on. Remember, this is without bowel movements, pissing, metabolic water, because you gotta take into account while we are running on pure fats, we're creating a hell lot of metabolic water here all the time, okay? So sooner or later we're gonna have to take a piss. And this is what we're gonna look at now. Because from these assumptions we can actually somewhat assume the weight loss, respectively the weight gain graph that results from that, okay? So let's take a look at pure carbohydrates here. We're losing weight just by breathing on carbs, and that constantly, okay, with a constant metabolic rate. So our weight loss graph should look somewhat like this, okay? We've got time and weight. We're losing weight constantly. We're breathing it out. Now, when we take bowel movements and pissing into account, as you can see, we're breathing, creating metabolic water, breathing out weight, and then we also have to take a piss because we gotta get rid of that metabolic water. Breathing out weight, pissing again, breathing out weight, pissing. So we've got this stepwise loss of weight through pissing, and we've got the breathing out weight loss. So that should already come pretty close to a dry fasted state, okay, to a real dry fasted weight loss graph. So let's take a look at fats again. With fats, we're gaining weight all the time very slowly as long as we're just breathing, okay? We're gaining weight very slowly with respiration. Now, with bowel movements and pissing, it should look somewhat like this. We've got this stepwise weight loss here. We're gaining, and then we gotta get rid of our metabolic water again. Gaining, and get rid of the metabolic water. So as you can see, the weight loss is here slower than on carbs as well. Now, the thing is, if you're taking a look here at these piss steps here, they are a little bit smaller than here on the carbohydrates. In the last video I made about dry fasting, I explained how actually carbohydrates create more metabolic water per calorie burned than fats. And this is something that I tried to depict here as well, because as you can see, the pisses here are smaller than on the carbohydrates, because we're creating less metabolic water on fats, okay? So the end conclusion of this all is that the weight loss on fats is slower, although the BMR is the same. Okay, that's interesting. So the next thing is, why is this interesting? Okay, so that's another interesting question. Why is this even interesting? Why the hell would you think about all these things? Why would you measure your urine and make a weight loss graph and all that stuff? The answer is here. No, just kidding. Why is this interesting? A lot of people, when I announced I do a fast again, asked me, so how long can you fast? You're fasting quite frequently, and I'm not sure if this is healthy. How long can you actually fast without getting into health troubles and stuff like that? Now, all these things that we have discussed before can actually help you to determine if your fast is still healthy or not. Now, let's get into that a little bit. We gotta take a look at the bigger picture in order to find that out, okay? let's take a look at the bigger picture of dry fasting. We've got basically two possibilities here. Possibility number one is, you can see here again the weight loss graph, okay? So first of all, you have here the start of the fast, okay? You just finished your last meal, so you're gonna lose weight really quickly at the beginning because you're gonna get rid of a lot of weight in your gut. You're gonna go piss a lot, and you're gonna simply get rid of a lot of water weight and weight in your gut. Now, once all that is cleared up, your body is going to start utilizing its carbohydrate stores, okay? So you're basically losing carbs. You're burning carbs first. You're burning off your liver glycogen. You're burning off your muscle glycogen. Now, as you remember, the body on carbohydrates losing weight quicker than on fats. So at the beginning, your weight loss curve is going to be steeper. Now, at some point, you're gonna hit ketosis. This is going to happen when your carbohydrate storages are empty, okay? Your liver is empty, your muscles are empty. Your body has to create ketones basically to support the brain with something that it can burn, and your body is going to go in ketosis. Now, in ketosis, you're gonna run on fats purely. That's why your weight loss curve is not as steep as on carbs, okay? Until a critical point. And this is the point when you're running out of fat. Now, theoretically, you could fast so long that you're basically running out of fat, you're super shredded, the only thing that's left is muscles, basically. And then the body has to turn up another metabolic pathway to create carbohydrates for the brain, and that is gluconeogenesis. So it's going to take proteins from your muscles and turn them into sugar. Now, sugar is a carbohydrate, glucose is a carbohydrate. So when you're switching again from fat metabolism into gluconeogenesis, you should note a steepening up of your weight loss curve again, okay? Not only because you're burning carbs again from gluconeogenesis, but also because it costs you additional energy to even create carbs out of proteins. So this is an energy-wise much more inefficient way to burn energy, to burn resources basically to create energy. That's why you should see this steepening up of the weight loss curve, okay? You should lose weight quite a lot more all of a sudden. Now, this is only one possibility. The second possibility is that everything is the same, and once you're hitting this critical point, and you're hitting gluconeogenesis, your weight loss curve actually continues to be quite flat, but you're gonna feel like total shit because your body is actually in super energy saving mode, okay? It reduces your BMR, and that's why you don't really notice on the weight loss curve that you're in gluconeogenesis, but at the same time, because you have so little energy available for your body functions, you should feel like complete crap. So either of these two things can happen when you hit gluconeogenesis, okay? You either feel like total crap or your weight loss curve is steepening up like crazy. Now, you should not get into this stage, all right, when you're fasting. You should stop somewhere here before this critical point, okay? When you burned off your fats, you burned off all your toxins, you did a lot of autophagy, got rid of your little issues, and then you start eating again so that you don't fall into gluconeogenesis, so that you don't burn your muscle off, okay? So that means if you can draw a weight loss graph and you can sense that all of a sudden your weight loss is steepening up, that's going to tell you that you should stop now. On the other hand, when you're feeling like total crap and your weight loss curve stayed the same, and here you felt quite good, it's another sign that you should stop again. So that's why it could be interesting how steep these weight loss curves are, because it could determine when you should stop your fast. Now, of course, this is not black and white, okay? If you're fasting, it's actually a mixture of the two. And the reality is that as soon as you're hitting ketosis, also gluconeogenesis is already going to be turned up by the body, because as soon as you're hitting ketosis and you have zero carbs in your body anymore, the brain always wants some glucose, and also some other cells in your body. They are absolutely dependent on glucose. So as soon as you're hitting ketosis, you're also going to tune up gluconeogenesis, and in the end it's going to be a mixture of the two, okay, how this critical point is going to turn out. So if one can sense an increase in steepness of the weight loss curve, stop the dry fast, because don't forget, this always counts for dry fasting. If you're drinking water during this process, it's gonna blur out your weight loss curve a lot, okay, because you're gonna get these steps of drinking water in there. When you're dry fasting, everything is not black and white anyway, because your body lets go of water not in a regular manner, okay. You're gonna have periods where you're losing a lot of water and you're setting a lot of metabolic water free, and then you're gonna have periods where your body is going to try to hold water actually, okay. So it's not that easy. Now, additionally, we also still ignored perspiration. All right, so sweat and water loss through breathing. That must be taken into account in a dry fasting situation as well, of course, because who says that you not perspirate when you're dry fasting? Of course you do. So in the internet, I looked up that an average 70-kilogram man perspirates around 600 milliliters of water per day on a dry fast. Now, not on a dry fast, in general. Now the question is, how much is that on a dry fast? Because I know from experience, of course, if you're not drinking anything for 24 hours, you're gonna get a somewhat dry mouth. You know, your respiratory stuff is gonna dry out a bit. So I'm pretty sure, and you're also not sweating a lot. Okay, your body is gonna try to hold water with every measure that it can. So your perspiration is gonna probably drop. I would assume to like 300 milliliters a day. That's around half that in the 70 kilograms average man. Okay, so 300 milliliters a day. That equates to 300 grams per day lost, or 300 divided by 24 is 12.5 grams per hour of additional weight lost. Doesn't even matter if you're in carbohydrate metabolism or ketosis, okay? So that's of course making it pretty hard because now you're losing weight all the time. When you're taking perspiration into account, this graph here from the fat loss curve is going to look also somewhat similar to the graph from the carbohydrate curve, okay? Let's take a look at how it looks exactly. We can, of course, calculate that. On carbs, we've got now 9 grams per hour lost through just breathing, plus 12.5 grams per hour lost just by perspiration. That's a total of 21.5 grams of weight lost per hour without pissing, without taking a bowel movement, without eating, without drinking. So now, if we're taking a look at that, this is an exact graph here, okay, with nicely scaled out scales and stuff like that. We've got the hours down here, and we've got weight down here. That's 1 kilogram, okay. So that's probably what your weight loss curve will look like. You're gonna basically live 3 hours without pissing and stuff, just breathing, losing weight here. Then you're gonna take a bigger piss. 3 hours again, taking a bigger piss, 3 hours again. Now I assumed here that one piss weighs around 200 grams. That's from my personal experience. It's going to be of course different for different people. And here, as you can see, I've got these 215 grams that you're losing in 10 hours. Okay, it's 21.5 grams per hour. It's 215 grams per 10 hours. So we've got a slope here of 14 degrees. So if your weight loss curve in essence looks something like this, then you know you're in carbohydrate metabolism. Now let's take a look at the fats. We've got a weight gain of 1.1 grams per hour when we're just breathing without perspiration. With perspiration taken into account, it's going to be plus 12.5 grams per hour. There's a total of 11.4 grams per hour of weight lost, okay? during fat metabolism, because the perspiration here way outweighs what you're breathing out in terms of CO2 in fat metabolism. So you're gonna have a somewhat similar curve. The only difference is gonna be that the slope is gonna be half as steep. Okay, we've got only 7 degrees of slope here, as you can see, because here we lose only 114 grams per 10 hours, derived from this number here. And your pisses are going to be, they are gonna be spaced out more. Okay, as I said, you're gonna produce more volume of metabolic water on carbohydrates per calorie burned than on fats per calorie burned. So I just kept the volume of the piss the same, but I spaced out the piss from 3 hours to 4 hours. So if your weight loss curve is going to look something like this, then you know that you're in fat metabolism. Now the problem is, as you can see, they are quite similar, and you would need a really exact scale and a really exact graph, a really exact method of drawing this graph to find out if you're actually, in fat metabolism or on carbohydrate metabolism. So that's basically the thoughts that went into this process. Now the only thing that's missing now is basically taking a look at my weight loss curve during this 75-hour dry fast. And of course I made quite an exact weight loss curve, not as exact unfortunately as these ones are, but somewhat exact. Let's take a look at it here real quickly. That's the green one. Okay, the green one up here, I always measured before I took a piss, then I took the piss, and then I measured afterwards again, so that I can get these really nice steps here, okay? The steps that I predicted during my theoretical analysis here. So, as you can see, it's pretty steep actually. It's pretty steep. And on some occasions I had the occurrence, so to say, that I did not lose a lot of weight over quite a period of time. For example, here, so that's over 4 hours of time difference here, but I only lost 0.1 kilograms or stuff like that. And there I thought, hell, how is this possible? How can I lose only 0.1 kilograms in 4 hours when I'm dry fasting? I should breathe out weight like crazy. But of course, I'm in pure ketosis here. As you can see here I entered ketosis, okay, after roughly 30 hours. So I was in pure ketosis here, and that's what got me thinking. That's what got me calculating, actually. And then I calculated the stuff out and found out that if you're in pure fat metabolism, you're actually gaining weight when you're only sitting around, and breathing without perspiration, of course, which seems to be quite limited in a dry fasting state, okay, because your body becomes this sponge which kind of really wants to keep its moisture, and as soon as you're drinking something, as you can see here, I've got a little bit of a rehydration curve. Your body is gonna store water very easily. So I gained here 1 kilograms just by drinking very quickly, another few grams, and as you can see, the piss that resulted from this drinking 1 kilograms of water was only 200 grams again, just like with the pisses before, okay? So yeah, that was quite interesting. Next time, maybe I'm gonna try to draw a graph that is exactly like these ones here, so that I can detect maybe the differences in steepness, in slope, okay, of the weight loss. But even if that would give me some additional accuracy, we still have to take into account that you're not losing weight on a dry fast constantly. You're gonna have periods where your body is letting go of metabolic water, okay? And then you're gonna have periods where your body actually wants to keep its metabolic water, it wants to keep its moisture. So these are all the thoughts that run into this drive, or came from this dry fast. Basically, I hope it was somehow interesting for you. It was a little bit of a dive into human metabolism and physiology. I always find it interesting to geek out on these details, because it can teach you a lot, For example, it explains why I lose so much water all the time when I am at the crag and climbing, and why I don't actually have to drink a lot, okay? Because when I am climbing at the crag, there's a high chance, or basically 100% chance, that I ate a high carbohydrate meal the evening before, so I'm carved up. Now, when I'm climbing, I'm burning off glycogen like crazy, because this is a strength sport essentially. Okay, it's not a lot of endurance where you burn a lot of fat as well, but this is actually quite a high percentage of your energy is actually coming from carbohydrates, I'm sure, when you're climbing. So you're gonna create a hell lot of metabolic water. Remember, we're creating 1.3 times more metabolic water per calorie of carbohydrates burned compared to the calorie of fat burned. This is something that I found out in my previous video of dry fasting, about dry fasting. So in case you haven't seen it, by the way, check it out here somewhere. But anyway, yeah, that's all. Now I'm pretty exhausted. I hope you enjoyed it. Finally, I want to say that I did all these calculations myself and I did the drawings myself, so this is not free or 100% probably of human error. If you found anything that I did wrong, or have some additional ideas or ideas for interpretation of these results and stuff like that, please let me know in the comments down below. I would be highly interested to read that. And apart from that, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little geek out. For me, it's always funny to do these things, to make something out of my body experiments, and I also want to share this with you guys, because this is something that's fun for me to do, So anyway, I hope you're having a great time. Soon we're gonna get back into training and get strong as hell again. Ooh, that's gonna be amazing. Anyway, stay strong, keep crushing, and I'll see you soon.